You're listening to Opportunity SC, where we shine a spotlight on the innovators, leaders, and advocates shaping the future of community economic development in South Carolina. Welcome to another edition of Opportunity SC podcast. I'm your host, Bernie Mazyck. I have the good fortune of serving as president and CEO of the South Carolina Association for Community Economic Development. And we are delighted to have Darren Goss, president and CEO of the Coastal Community Foundation, the largest community foundation in the state of South Carolina. Darren, thank you so much for being a part of our podcast.
Bernie, it is always a pleasure to be able to share time with you and reflect on the great work that we collectively do in our community. So the honor's mine to be with you in this venue. So thank you.
Well, and you and I go way back, and I've followed your career and have been in awe of the impact that you've had in each phase of your career, and everywhere you've landed, you've been able to transform communities, and it's just so exciting to see the work that you're doing with Coastal Community Foundation. If you don't mind sharing with us your journey, a little bit about the path that brought you to this position, and just tell us a little bit about yourself. I know quite a bit, but I think our audience would benefit greatly in knowing a little bit about you.
Sure. I sort of live by this scriptural reference, to whom much is given, much is required. And I know that growing up here in Charleston, South Carolina, on James Island, being the son of a essentially single mom, not knowing my biological father, statistically, I shouldn't be where I am, but I've had the good pleasure of having mentors throughout my career in life, from coaches to senior officers when I was in the military, to other philanthropic leaders, to nonprofit leaders like yourself, Bernie. You might remember it was back in 2008 or 2008 when we first met. And so you've been a big part of shaping sort of my philosophy around community development, my philosophy around how philanthropy shows up. And
I've influenced you. What are you trying to say? No, don't
no,
don't
I'm
help with that.
look, seriously, you have. You might remember a training that we did in Columbia with Marshall Crawford, who was at NeighborWorks America. Is my first time really introduced to SCACED and the work that you guys do. And I left that. I was at the United Way of Greenville at the time. I left that training fired up about what it means to create economic mobility opportunities for community economic development. And that was inspired in large part by you, by Marshall, and many other people around the room. And so it helped me understand the role that philanthropic organizations play in community economic development, and in a larger sense, the role that policy advocacy plays. We can talk about that a little bit later, but I'm a former military officer. I'm a former higher ed administrator, a short stint in the corporate world. I'm a trained and ordained minister of over 25 years. So I think that combination of a relentless pursuit for justice, for systems, leadership, and administration, for accountability and discipline, and then I think from a pastoral standpoint, for this significant and passion for human potential and human capability, is what I think people need to know about me. I think people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think leaders like ourselves in positions of influence need to demonstrate both to our internal teams, to the communities around us, and to those that we seek to serve, that we deeply care about them, that it's not just a job, a paycheck, or career, that their humanity is tied to our humanity. And I think that's the African proverb, Ubuntu. That's what it's all about.
Well, and you mentioned leadership.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned a little bit about your journey, the various institutions that you've been a part of, and of course, leadership is so important to transforming communities. Leaders have vision. I'm not going to go through all those qualities of a leader,
Yeah.
but through your different assignments, because I too am ordained clergy, so we believe we're called and assigned.
That's right.
What in those experiences that you've had would you say have most influenced your journey as you've gone along through those different institutions?
Yeah, I probably summarize it in a couple of different, what people would call Gossisms now. Just my little sayings is sort of the way I drive and think about leadership, leading organizations. The first, I think, is that for me, listening intently to people in communities. And when you listen, you repeat back what you heard. I think three things happen. One is there's an accountability. People know that you've heard them, and I think that's very important for leaders. Is that the people you're seeking to lead or serve need to know that you've heard them. So there's an accountability there. I think when you realize the power that people vest in you as a leader, and they give you permission to speak on their behalf, then there's a level of authority that you're not speaking for yourself. You're speaking for these broader voices that may not be around tables, and so there's an authority that goes with that voice. And as a minister, we say that we have an authority divinely appointed us by God. We speak with that authority, and so I think that's important. So there's accountability, there's authority, and then there's this third thing, this authenticity, that because you show up and you can quote real people's stories, you can quote because you've had boots on the ground, and you can walk where people have walked, then there's an authenticity to that. There's a realness about that. There's an unfiltered proximity that I think good leaders need to have. And so that listening for me is not just sitting in my office, but it's actually getting out in the community with nonprofit leaders, with real people, with business leaders, with the community in the largest, broadest sense, and understanding what role we can play as an organization, I can play as a leader, to advance that agenda of a vibrant community that works for everyone. And so to me, that's what's important. The second thing is, Bernie, for me, I think in roles like we serve as CEOs, you're so distant from where the action happens, where execution takes place. And so if you're a control freak, that could be very difficult. But I learned very early in my career as a young lieutenant from my first sergeant. He said, Lieutenant, he said, you have to be able to provide your teams and your soldiers three things: time, resources, and guidance. And then respectfully, he told me, and then get out of the way. He said, you got to monitor, you got to do those things, but time, resources, and guidance. Make sure that you're clear about what you're trying to achieve, why you're trying to achieve it, and then articulate to them, whether it's a lone young private or your platoon sergeant, their role in making it happen, because people want to know that they're contributing to the common good. And so those two things, those two frameworks, in my 30 plus years of leading organizations and teams, are the things that really center me in how I lead and how I show up in communities.
Well, you hit a number of gold nuggets there, but one thing that I picked up on, I thought I heard you say, authority doesn't always come immediately from the position, the title.
Yes.
And what I heard you say is, you and I know personally, you've been in the community, on the ground, having the conversations with folk at the community level, and you've listened and heard what the issues are, and by doing that, you were given the authority to speak on behalf of let's say, the least of these. You've been given the authority to represent the needs and concerns of those in the community that you seek to serve. And am I hearing that right? Because authority doesn't automatically come with the title.
That's right. I think one of the misnomers that I think a lot of leaders have is because they have the title, they do have some authority. Some people might have executive authority. I think in the nonprofit sector, and I think we're learning politically that there's legislative authority, that you have to ask permission. And so one of the favorite things I like to ask people is, do you mind if I share your story? Do you mind if I share what you just said? Do you mind if I tell, or engage this person on your behalf? Because if that's not given, right, you can't usurp or appropriate another person's witness or testimony. And so I think it's important for us to request the authority to speak on behalf of certain communities or certain people and share their testimony or their witness. And I think that's inherently powerful. Sometimes people assume that on themselves and end up making, to me, the most fatal of errors as a leader, and that is not gaining the trust and respect of people because you're appropriating their stories.
Exactly, and the trust is so important to be an authentic leader. And when you ask permission to share their story, you're engaging them with true, authentic, or actually giving them their true, authentic voice.
That's right.
How do you affirm that that person you're talking to is being heard? How do you help them realize that they are being heard when they're communicating with you?
Many times I call it closing the loop. It's one of those things we used to share in the military is like, hey, you got to close the loop. And so if I've asked a person in a community conversation or a one-on-one conversation, hey, do you mind if I share this? Do you mind if I, engage in this situation? It's my responsibility. Again, remember, accountability is to go back to that person and say, hey, I did share this, and this is what happened. This was the result. You should expect to hear from this person, or this is where that person ended up, or this is what we're doing as a community foundation with respect to what you shared with us, or this is what we're not going to do, even though you shared this with us. And I think that level of accountability and transparency about what you do with the information is as critical as the information shared. Because sometimes you just can't take action on everything you hear and everything you know. It's not,
Absolutely.
that could be timing, that could be resources, that could be capacity, that could be outside of your lane as an organization. And I think it's important for us to understand where we fit in the bigger ecosystem of community development and leadership, and then play that role effectively, which lends this last point is making the referrals. There's some things I just, as an organization or as a person, that's outside of our scope of work, and we need to refer. I need you to call Bernie Mazyck. I need you to call, Jenny Stevens, or I need you to call someone else who's better positioned to address your particular issue.
Well, you can conduct a master class in leadership just based on what you shared here. And so when you schedule that, make sure I'm the person on the list that you invite to that, because especially in the times we're in now, authentic leadership is so needed. Authentic voices are so important now to the narratives that's going forward, because systems are just rolling, and the systems are not necessarily being developed and designed to address some of the most intrinsic problems we're having in our community, in our society. So I'm gonna pivot a little bit from you, Darren Goss, CEO of Coastal Community Foundation, to Coastal Community Foundation and philanthropy in general. Being the leader of the largest community foundation in the state, you have a unique position and a unique perspective to talk about systems change. So can you share with us what role you see philanthropy in general, or community foundations in particular, playing in changing systems that are causing some of the most entrenched challenges in our region and in our state. What role do you see these institutions playing?
Yeah, let me just, boy, we could talk for about an hour about this, but let me try to summarize contextually where we are, Bernie, and I know you are very familiar with this. We are in a time where, particularly for philanthropy in the nonprofit sector, the third sector, where we used to be able to rely on government as a partner, either through partnerships and executing on community services or needs, as a funder, as a co-funder, as a co-investor. We used to be able to rely on government to be an equal partner at the table with us. And today, that kind of partnership is frayed, it's challenged, and it's challenged and frayed because of all of the political noise and rhetoric that we hear and see, because it's right now unpopular and, to me personally, unfortunate that we can't call out the disparities that exist along a spectrum of issues based on race or gender or those things. And I think that's a disservice to the work that we do. So contextually, it's our work is made more difficult because now we have to dance around language. And so that, to me, that's where I think philanthropy, organizations like Coastal Community Foundation, while we do have donors of all sorts of political stripes, all sorts of political perspectives, where I think we can differentiate ourselves is we can be that truth teller, the tuning fork in communities that say we have a obligation and a duty to our donors and to the broader community to call balls and strikes. There are disparities that exist economically in communities, and we need to address those disparities. Those disparities break down when it comes to race. It breaks down when it comes to geography, rural versus urban. It breaks down when it comes to immigration status. And we have to be willing to say that, and then not only say it, but then put resources to those initiatives. Those resources aren't just the financial resources. They are the policy advocacy resources. We have to be able to educate, inform. We have to, and that's both electeds, that's civic leaders, that's business leaders. Philanthropy sits in this unique intersection in our communities, where around our tables, you can have a neighborhood president because of the fund that you helped create, Neighborhoods Energized to Win, sitting next to a corporate billionaire, all focused on how we create enough affordable housing, how we protect our beautiful coastal environment. And my experience has been, we all agree that needs to happen. The opportunity we have is the how to make that happen. And I
if I can,
foundation plays a pivotal role.
if I can interrupt, because you talked about truth telling, you talked about the authentic voice. You answer to a board. You talk to donors.
Right.
Are they receptive? I'm assuming they are, to the truth. Are they open to hearing the realities of these disparities based on race, gender, economic status? What's been your experience of the last year and a half or more?
Well, the wonderful thing about my board and my team, my staff team of colleagues here, is that we do two things. We read reality truthfully, and we take action responsibly. And so we back in our vernacular, we call a spade, right? Because we look at the data, we read the information, we understand the difference between rhetoric, those things that get in the way of real policy, progress, practice, and investment, and some of the structural challenges that perpetuate some of the problems. And we've spent a decade now trying to understand the appropriate role for the foundation to play and moving key logs, leveraging our resources, both financial, endowed, reputational. And so for my board and I, We don't want to add to the noise. We want to advance a narrative of a community that's vibrant, that's equitable, and that's for everyone. And that means sometimes we come up against the extremes. I mean, we've been called a woke community foundation, and I've been called dark money Darren. So sometimes the progressives, the far left, don't appreciate that we don't move as quickly and maybe as loudly as they would like. And sometimes those on the far right don't appreciate that we're equity focused and that we call that out. And for me and the board, we recognize and hold that tension because we understand our role as a community foundation for the entire community, those who appreciate what we do and those who may not fully appreciate what we do.
Well, I often am accused of the familiarity of the topic I'm dealing with and assume everybody is where I am. So we kind of leapfrogged over what a community foundation is,
Yeah.
what coastal community foundation is, what is your geographic area, and I kept saying you're the largest community foundation in the state. So let's go ahead and give folk that rundown so that they know who they're talking to and what area you cover.
Yeah, so Coastal Community Foundation, established in 1974, is a organization that promotes endowed philanthropy. Endowed philanthropy is money that's going to be here perpetually, and we do that through various amount of ways. That's funds. Think about your mutual fund if you have a mutual fund with a bank or something like that. These are community assets that are designed to grow over time, grant make or give scholarships at a 4% of that balance perpetually. And so when Coastal Community was founded back in 1974, we had $9,000 in the bank from the historic Charleston Rotary. This week, we just crested $605 million in assets under management. Being the largest community foundation in the state in regard to total assets is good. The powerful thing is we do more than $30 million a year in grants and scholarships and impact investments, and that's real tangible impact in people's lives. We serve the 9 counties of coastal South Carolina, so think Myrtle Beach, Horry County in the north, and Beaufort, Hilton Head, Jasper County in the south, Hampton, Colleton, Charleston, Dorchester, Berkeley, and Georgetown. That's our footprint. And while we are geographically located in the Low Country, we think our work has implications across the state with our network of foundations around South Carolina, the funding we do to statewide and in partnerships with statewide organizations like yours, Bernie, and then our regional affiliation with Philanthropy Southeast and the work that we do with them on public policy at the congressional level is very important to who we are and what we do. We have some 900 different funds, 275 individual donors who've created funds that are donor advised, 90 field of interest funds ranging everything from focused on coastal environment to scholarships to, we have something called a Coon Hunters Fund. Imagine that, an endowed fund that supports coon hunting. But that's the diversity and variety of what the Coastal Community Foundation is, and the tensions we hold, as I mentioned earlier, with the various stakeholders we have. Let me just say this one thing about that diversity of fund holders and stakeholders. It is our strength. It is the thing that gives us the reputational capital to call people together who might be at different ends ideologically of a particular issue, but because they have entrusted us with sometimes their most valuable resource, their financial resources, then we can bring people together. We can have the hard, maybe difficult conversations around what's in the best interest for the most people in our community, and then we can get the solutions. That's a powerful place to be. It's a place of honor for me and my entire team and our board, and we approach that work with a great deal of humility and appreciation for how very difficult that is in a time in which we find ourselves.
Well, and you said it that even though your footprint may be coastal South Carolina, your impact is statewide, and frankly, I would say even nationally impactful as well, because when you come forward and join in a particular policy position, you're not, just a sideline entity, but you're coming with not only your capital, financial capital, but you're also coming with a level of political capital because, you're able to put your money where your mouth is. You talk to legislators about whatever the priorities might be. It might be housing, it might be workforce development, it might be child care, but you're able to say, okay, we need this policy because we've seen on the ground this issue being a hindrance to economic growth. And we have already invested, or we will invest, or we have donors. So
Yeah.
that's really why I think you're such a powerful entity. And in these times, also your ability and willingness just to be a truth teller.
Yes.
That is just so important to us. I'll just say real quick, SCACED owes its genesis to Coastal Community Foundation. You mentioned briefly the new fund. For those who not known this story, the new fund I had the opportunity to manage when it was started. That new fund, which was Neighborhoods Energized to Win, working in inner city, low income, minority neighborhoods, helping those neighborhood leaders understand their voice and empowering them to work. That was the genesis of what we know now as SCACED. So I'm not going to go through the 8 years of how we did that and now the 32 years of SCACED, but that in and of itself is also a powerful testimony of CCF, because SCACED came out of CCF, but also the Center for Heirs Property Preservation, Turn 90.
Country Food Bank. Yeah.
So many organizations were birthed out of Coastal Community Foundation, and I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but that too is a strength and a power of your organization.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people underestimate the philanthropy has the power to do is to look globally at a region, understand the gaps, and then marshal resources, convene people, and say, how do we fill this gap? Not just for today. We're not putting our finger in the dike. We're trying to fix the leak, right? And how do we build sustainable organizations that's going to address this issue for a lifetime? And so that's the organizations you've named, 30, 35 years ago, that are still vibrant, still value add, still necessary, and will be necessary for a generation or more to come, because and I know I can talk to you with your faith tradition. Christ says that the poor you'll have with you always. There's always going to be those people in our community who need that safety net, right? Who need organizations in place to help lift them as they try to rise. And so or secure them until they heal and then are able to rise or sustain themselves. And so I think that's the power of what community foundations by and large can do and should be doing. And then couple that with all of the necessary policy advocacy, information sharing, data sharing, all of the things that we do, investing in and partnering alongside organizations like yours, Bernie, SCACED. SCACED's track record of rural community economic development, your success in public policy advocacy for the community development tax credit, your success on the work that you're doing in payday lending and trying to put a cap on that. It's both inspiring for me personally, but challenging to philanthropy because we've got to get in the game. I mean, we've got to spend more time, resources, and some of that reputational capital alongside of you and your colleagues in Colombia and in DC. And so it's not a conversation that you and I have not had over the years, but I think as I think about your work at SCACED and what you do as a statewide organization, it's seminal work that's incredibly important, particularly as rural communities start to feel the pressure of urban and suburban draw, where all the job opportunities exist. And so how do we create those economic opportunities, those entrepreneurial opportunities? How do we build that out in our rural communities? And I'm hoping and trusting in you, your leadership, your board, to help us understand how we can best support that. So as a person who've watched you and SCACED over the last almost 20 plus years, I'm as you know, a fan, supporter, and just think that the work that you do is essential work, both for the present and future of economic mobility in South Carolina. So I want to just praise you and thank you, my friend.
Well, I want to heap the same praise upon you. When you took the helm of Coastal Community Foundation, you took it to another level, and just being in your company, watching and joining in with you as you move CCF, the philanthropic movement, to the next level, and to even dare say you're involved with the advocacy side of things is powerful, and we're looking forward to that. We want to honor your time, and so we want to thank you for giving us so much of your valuable time.
Sure.
As you look ahead, what is your vision for the future of Coastal Community Foundation, and I dare say the Charleston region and maybe even the state of South Carolina? Where do you see our greatest opportunities and greatest challenges that we're facing?
Yeah, we've sort of enumerated the challenges in setting the context for this conversation. Our vision remains the same at CCF. We are here to help create vibrant communities, rich in equity, and opportunity, so that everyone can fulfill their full potential. And we think that we do that in two ways. We bring people together, and we invest our resources wisely. What are our resources? Our resources are social capital, moral capital, intellectual and reputational capital, and of course our financial capital. We can't do that without addressing the policy, practices, and investments that don't get where they need to go. And so that's where we try to leverage that. The future of CCF, I think, is bright. It's strong. We're a $600 million organization now. It's not lost on me that in the next several years we'll be $1 billion organization. My philosophy around that is growth for impact. We're focusing on 5 particular areas. Housing. We just started and launched a new organization, Tri-County Housing Futures Fund. The Venerable Gianna Shaw Johnson is leading that effort for us, because I firmly believe that if you're going to do something big, you got to go get the best and brightest people to execute it, like CCF did with you when you took SCACED. And so we believe that we're focusing on making sure that children in our region have quality education. So we went and hired one of the best educators, Dr. Katisha Gathers, to lead Charleston Education Partners, which is focused on Charleston, but as a regional effort. We're going to double down on the Pinckney Scholars Program that was established after the Mother Emanuel tragedy of almost of 11 years ago. And then coastal squeeze is real, right? I mean, we have thousands of people coming to our region every year, and we've got to rightly develop the kind of housing infrastructure and everything else we need to have, while also preserving what makes the Low Country great: our seaways, our culture, our ecosystems around. I mean, I like to go out to a creek and crab and cast a net and pull out my own shrimp. I think we need to be able to do that. And then finally, to help support the work of organizations like yours, our Impact Investing Fund, really designed to help support nonprofit capacity and sustainability, to help entrepreneurialism and small business, to help opportunities where we just see that we can bridge that through our impact investing. We think that if we can raise the $210 million to fully fund these initiatives over the next 5 years, we're going to put ourselves in position not only to be relevant, but of great value from a financial standpoint, but also from a policy advocacy standpoint. That fuels that kind of work, and there are countless people out there that don't know it yet, but they're going to contribute to this effort. They're going to work with organizations like yours and mine, and we're going to marshal their resources, whether that's intellectual, financial, or social, and we're going to go make this low country of South Carolina, and by proximity, South Carolina as a state where people can live, can thrive, can worship, and feel like they belong and can contribute. So that's our vision. That's what it's all about for me and for us. And I look forward to the journey. I'm going to be around for a while, God willing, and I just can't get to work. So that's where we're heading, Bernie.
Well, I am even more excited now about the future.
Yeah.
And what you laid out puts the Coastal Community Foundation in a unique position, because as corporations come to the Low Country, as wealthy individuals come to the Low Country, and they are introduced to Coastal Community Foundation, and then you introduce them to the needs, but also the opportunities for their investment. $1 billion, that's going to happen very quickly.
Yeah.
And you driving those resources into those areas for systemic change is really exciting. And I'm looking forward to being hopefully a partner, and maybe sometime in the distant future an observer of that transformative change that happens. So again, thank you, Darren, for being a part of being a powerful voice of our podcast, blessing us with your wisdom, with your authenticity, your knowledge and experience. And I know those who will watch this podcast will equally be excited, hopeful, inspired, and willing to join in on this journey of making our area a thriving part of our state, and by proximity, the state itself. Again, thank you so much for your time today, and God bless you.
God bless you, Bernie. Thank you. Always a pleasure to break bread with you, sir.
The OpportunitySC podcast is a production of the South Carolina Association for Community Economic Development. Remember to like and subscribe for more episodes wherever you stream. Until next time, enjoy.